I would like to welcome you all to our second new Monday interview series, where we're going to be interviewing both members from the Discord community and industry special guests. And today we're hosting the illustrious David Fox, who has had a profound impact on many of our lives while we were playing games and not doing our homework or other things we should have been doing. And I want to kick off this meeting with just a little bit of context for those of you who are new, and sort of set the stage here. So one, please keep yourselves muted for the time being. We're going to have a Q&A after the interview, so we'll have plenty of time to talk and ask questions. That's my favorite part. And you're also, I don't know if people having videos on right now will affect the bandwidth. So that's something people can play with. And I'm going to just give a little context. So I've been running this Discord now for about 3 months, and it's meant to be a platform to help those of us who are struggling in film, VFX, animation, gaming, and tech. There's a lot of industry disruption right now, a lot of people out of work. It's a really challenging time, and I wanted to try to do something that would make me feel better about myself, that would make me feel like I have still purpose and agency and can do something good. So I began the Discord, and I began doing free talks, just sharing what I know, trying to inspire others and help create some hope out there. And it's grown at a very healthy pace, and it's been remarkable having people from all over the world, from all these industries, from all disciplines and skill levels. And I think that right now it feels like it's a platform of me, but I'm really trying to make this a platform for us. And so I invite anyone, this is being run by a small team of volunteers. And so if this Discord can bring value to you, if you find it helpful, and you feel like you would, and you have time and space and energy to contribute in some small way, please reach out to me or the team. We would love more help. There's a million things we want to do with this, and we're just sort of short on people. And if you are a professional or you are a domain expert, come to the table. I'd love to interview you. I'd love to give you a platform to promote yourself, to share what you know with the community, and because I want to learn too. I'm here for the same reason. So historically, I've been doing mainly talks about Pixar. I've also, the summer series, I'm doing similar talks around other films, breaking down cinematic language, how visual design choices help tell the story and support the story and create the audience impact. We now have our regular, now weekly guest interviews. So these are every Monday. The cinematic design talks are every Friday. These are some of the people, these are the works of some of the people we're going to be speaking with. And clearly today we have David. I think I will just sort of leave the preamble there, and let's jump into learning about David Fox and David's journey and Lucasfilm Computer Division. I think it's a good place to start. And David, thank you for being here, and thank you for dressing up for the occasion.
Yes, I'm wearing the same jacket right now. You can see it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Loud and clear. And then you're also you're in layers too. You got your shirt.
Yes. That's it. The shirts too. It's like, I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah. And David's studio there is filled with swag from the glory days. It looks like nice. Look at that. I love it. So. You before you got into gaming, you were doing programming, I believe. Can you talk a little bit about what you were doing before gaming and how that got you into gaming?
Yeah, well, there was a period in the mid '70s where I was actually counseling people and did that for several years. And there's a point where I felt like I wasn't reaching enough people. So Annie, my wife Annie, and I, and some friends, kind of did a brainstorming session of like, what's next, and started imagining how maybe these new things called computers. Well, they were new. Computers weren't new, but microcomputers were just starting to come out, and that somehow people are going to end up with computers of their own, and maybe there's some games that you could create on a computer that would help people learn more about themselves. And since I didn't know much about it, I think I took a couple of programming classes in high school and college, but wasn't a programmer, and that wasn't my focus during college. So Annie and I decided to start a public access microcomputer center in 1977 called the Marin Computer Center. And we started with 10 microcomputers, ended up with about 40, ended up with getting some grants. I taught myself programming and taught Annie, and Annie taught our members, and we had classes in BASIC. And we would have field trips and birthday parties and teach classes to adults and to kids, and we do outreach to schools. And one of the things we got to do is, because we're a nonprofit, a bunch of different new computer companies or computer game companies would send us their games for our people to play, and we would review them for Creative Computing magazine at the time. And then connected with Children's Television Workshop, and they were that's the Sesame Street people, they were going to open this new center in Philadelphia called Sesame Place, and they asked us if we could create a game for that. So that was my first actual game, was called Mix and Match Muppets. And also got to do a bunch of ports from the original Radio Shack version, TRS-80 version of Adventure International's text adventure games to other platforms like Apple II and others. And so by doing that, I got to look at the inside code of someone else's work and make changes, found a couple of bugs, and feel like I'd enhanced it slightly. But all that was like, me being immersed in it by learning other people's stuff. And because we were based in Marin, which is actually where Lucasfilm was based, we had a few people who were members who worked at the company, including a guy named Gary Leo, who worked at Industrial Light and Magic. And right after I finished working on, going back a step, I ended up writing a couple of books. One of them was on computer animation, and I got to go to visit the computer division at Lucasfilm, which was maybe a year old at the time, and interview them and look at what they're doing in state-of-the-art computer graphics, like the Star Trek II Wrath of Khan Genesis effect with fractal mountains, and so I had a connection there, and had met the people there. So a year later, when my book was done, I ended up hearing from my friend Gary Leo that, asked me if I heard that Lucasfilm was going to start a new games group. And this is the first thing that they were doing there, which I felt I could actually contribute to. I didn't know special effects. I knew I wasn't going to be able to, they weren't going to hire me to do anything else or make models. So when I heard about the games group, I quickly contacted them and got a interview. It ended up becoming the third person hired for what became first the games group inside the computer division, then eventually our own division, Lucasfilm Games, and then eventually LucasArts. And had to learn a lot more programming I didn't know, like how to code in 6502 assembly, which I never done before. So I was kind of learning it as I was creating my first game.
That's
long answer.
No, that's a great answer. That's exactly the answer I was looking for.
Okay.
Yeah, and then so your early I'd love to hear about your first product there that you got to really own. Well, first of all, I forgot. I had some slides here that I was going to do the preamble with the slides. So let me skip to these slides a little bit. So this is some of the work you've done that you've been responsible for, that you've led or programmed or designed. And the founding of Lucasfilm Games Group. So this is like early mid 80s.
Yeah, with magazines, it was at 1984.
Yeah.
Probably around 84.
Okay. And this was for especially for the younger gamers and younger developers, where coming of age in a time where there's all this foundation, these genres have been well defined, all this tech and middleware and things. So what were some of the challenges when you were working in and coming into these games from scratch? What were some like the learning curves, the engines you have to develop, and and the constraints? Like, how do the constraints compare to what they are today, and how was that like a forcing function?
Yeah, so a couple of things. First, the idea of an established company with a pretty big profile starting a games group inside of the company was something which I don't know if it had ever been done before that I was aware of. All the games companies that were before kind of bootstrapped themselves into existence. And we had this, not only, the Lucasfilm money, but Atari gave Lucasfilm $1 million to start this group with the idea that we would, our first games would be for the Atari computers. They would have first right of refusal for those. I think one of the biggest, so that was one. Another was Peter Langston, who's pictured standing up with a white shirt.
Yeah.
Was our first general manager of the group. And he was, his background was more research. I think he was at Bell Labs. And big Unix guy. People knew him from his PSL tapes for all these schools, and anyone that had a Unix computer would have his games that he created running on their systems. So he was brought in because he was a good match with the existing computer division, which was also very research oriented. And his orientation was like, can we do games in a different way? Can we use higher end computers to both test and simulate low end, and maybe his goal was like you write the game in a high level, in Unix in C or some other language, push a button and it automatically creates versions for all the target platforms you want. Never got there. That was probably naive, knowing that I don't think he was aware at the time of how brain dead the computers that were there, where you had to literally massage every line of code to make sure that you got the most optimal speed out of it, and reduce the size of the program so it would fit. Lots of optimization where we didn't have large resource inside the computer to do whatever we wanted to do. So so he was looking for people who didn't really have a solid or long-term games background. I mean, he didn't want people from Atari or from Parker Brothers or any other company that was Activision, I guess, had been doing games by then. He didn't want people from those companies because he didn't want them to come in with a pre-existing idea of how you were supposed to make games. So I was perfect because I hadn't worked for that. And looking at the picture there, Dave Levine sitting down with the Jedi shirt was also a brilliant programmer, but had never worked for a game company. Charlie Kilner, standing up with his arms crossed, was, I think, employee number 7 at Apple, but wasn't a games person. He was he's probably the best 6502 coder that I know. He just knew the system so well he could optimize things. And then Lauren Carpenter, who's standing up with the beard and the check shirt, is actually in the computer division. He wasn't a part of the games group. He was my first office mate. before our space was before we had the game space, our offices. And he's the one who did the fractal landscapes, and for the Star Trek to Genesis effect. And my goal in coming to Lucas, I think, was I wanted to be somehow inside of Star Wars. I wanted to be in that experience. And so I figured, okay, my first game is going to be a Star Wars game, of course. And I think on day 1 or 2, I found out that wasn't possible because all the rights to Star Wars had been sold to other companies. Parker Brothers / Kerner had it for the home market, and Atari had it for arcades. So I had to do a game that felt like Star Wars but wasn't Star Wars. And I really loved Star Raiders, which was an Atari game where you had this feeling of like moving through space, like you were first person going really fast. And the picture of the trench where I wanted that experience where you feel like you're speeding through something and having to steer. And being Lauren Carpenter's office mate and him being the Fractal whiz, I asked him whether it'd be possible to put fractals onto an 8-bit computer. And his first reaction was, laughing and saying, no, not possible. And then I guess he took it as a challenge. And his mind started thinking, he said, well, maybe there's a way. And he came back and borrowed an Atari 800 to take it home, learn 6502 assembly language, learn all the hardware functions of the Atari 800, and literally like in 3 days came back with a working demo of fractal landscape you could move through. No flight dynamics, it's just like a grid with fractals you could push in and out and move left, right. But proof of concept, I think he was getting 6 to 8 frames per second, which was like maybe twice the speed the current flight simulators that were out were getting. Wow. And it was a 3D model. I mean, remembered if you could turn around, go around, it would be the same. So it wasn't just randomly generated. It was randomly generated when you first start the game.
Yeah. So
I got the go ahead to do this. A picture up of a X-wing. Go back one slide there. So I wanted to feel like Star Wars. So I asked to see if they had a cockpit from an X-wing or any photos. I got the photo on the right and said, okay, now I'm going to take that and duplicate it on the Atari 800. And you can go to the next slide. And ended up with what you have on the left, which is as close as I could get to that. And then on the right is the actual a screenshot from the game. And so it became Rescue on Fractalus. And it's one of our first 2 games. The other was Ball Blazer, which Dave Levine created. And both of them were first person. And both of them did things which no one had ever seen on a microcomputer. They were both groundbreaking. I can't take any credit for the technical achievement for Rescue because that was all Lauren Carpenter and then Charlie Kellner who optimized it and made it go faster and got all the flight dynamics and cell animation working and the sound system. I was just more like I was the project leader and designer and did all the control panel stuff and the tuning of the levels and all the bells and whistles that went around flying into the landscape and back out again. And they were pretty groundbreaking. So I got to tell the story. So we got the game working. I really wanted it to be. I mean, I was a kind of an ex-hippie, non-violent kind of person. I didn't want it to be a killing game. So the whole goal was to go around rescuing these pilots that had crash landed on this planet. And the idea there were going to be enemies, I guess, in a saucer or a ship. And my idea was the way you would kill them would be to, fly very carefully through these treacherous canyons and make sharp turns, and hopefully the enemy pilot wouldn't be as quick and they would smash into the wall. So the whole thing was like by leading them on a chase and then making turns and have them do it. And so we ended up George Lucas came over to see both games in progress. This is maybe 6 to 8 months after we started working on them. And it gave him the joystick, and he's flying around jamming down the fire button on the joystick, and nothing happens. And say, well, where's the fire button? Why isn't it working? And I said, well, there is no fire button. You're just supposed to, lead the enemies into the walls. And he said, I need a fire button. We have to have a fire button. And he said, was that a choice, a game design choice, or was it a philosophical choice? And I said, well, it's really philosophical, so it's okay. So that was one thing. He was right. The other was him suggesting creating some tension and having something, what if these pilots who would start running to you to be rescued, what if every once in a while it turned out not to be a pilot, but it turned out to be one of the aliens in disguising himself as a pilot? And first we didn't think we could do it, but then we figured out a way to do it. And that probably was one of the, besides the practical landscape, having this pilot, this alien jump up in front of the windscreen there and start smashing on the glass and breaking through was probably the thing most people remember. It was like, for most people, it was the first time they had a jump scare in a game. And we did that on purpose. We got Atari to never mention the alien in the marketing material. And we never mentioned it in the manual. We just alluded to it with a story in the back that something happened. And first, I think 8 levels that you play, there is no monster pop-up, jaggy monster pop-up. And then finally, so everyone you're playing, it's relative, you feel like you've mastered the game, you're complacent, and all of a sudden something happens. You see this pilot running towards you, and his head looks, pixel for his head is green instead of white. And a guy pops up and starts smashing. There's a good scary sound that goes with it. Woo! And if you don't turn on your shields fast enough, he smashes through the windshield and you die. Or if you happen to get even more complacent and open the airlock door before the pilot starts knocking, then the alien jumps into the ship. You hear all these noises like he's tearing it apart. And if you aren't, basically that's another way you end up dying. You just don't see him at that point. So from that point on, the game changed for your experience, where all of a sudden you get this little adrenaline rush every time you see a pilot running towards you, because you don't know what it's going to be, and you can't, if you react too soon before you find out you might kill a real pilot, if you are too late, you end up getting killed yourself. And the time between pop-up and when he smashes through would get shorter and shorter as you move through the levels, so you have to get really good at that. So that was really fun. I had a great time demonstrating this when we got to do it, where I didn't tell people about that and then just let people be surprised. So I forgot what your original question was.
Oh no, you definitely answered it.
I did want to say one thing too, is that because we were, like I mentioned, I was kind of a research group. We were told the first games were consider them to be throwaway games, and I think that was partly because working for the Star Wars company, the expectations that we had for ourselves and we thought other people would have once the hype started getting out was that we were going to have these massive hits the first, right out of the gate. And by saying, okay, these are throwaway games, try something, see it as an experiment. If it's good, great. If it's not, we'll do another one. Not having that pressure that we had to hit it out of the park the first time, that we could take our time and really get to know our philosophies, how we wanted games to work or look. Really unusual in anywhere in the game industry where you'd have that kind of runway space to get it right, and way more. And we weren't, I think it took it took about a year and a quarter to finish, and then we showed them first at the Consumer Electronic. We had a press conference, and then we showed them the Consumer Electronics Show in June of 1984, and then right after that, Atari got bought by Jack Tramiel, and all the deals had to be renegotiated, and we ended up not going with them for the disc version, and that meant it took another year to get that ready to go. So, on the one hand, we had this great runway. On the other hand, because it was shown much earlier, and then something happened where I believe what happens, we gave some early discs to Atari for their marketing team to look at, and like within a week after that, it was on all the BBS systems as pirate copies. So most people who played this game and Ballblazer knew that from the working titles at the time and got pirated versions.
Yeah.
So successfully, I think it, huge number of people got to play it, but in terms of sales, I don't know how many people actually bought the final versions, at least not on Atari. When they came out on other platforms, yeah. So it may be that the Commodore 64 version was probably more widely played, even though I think it was slightly inferior because the frame rate was a little bit less, because the Commodore's CPU runs at a slower clock rate.
Well, anyway, it must have been validating to be pirated. I mean, it's kind of a good problem to have. And it gives you some validation, and it is great that LucasArts or Lucas Games had that mentality. I think some studios these days still have the mentality, just because the game space is so much more competitive and brutal, that I think wise people understand that you need to have a long runway of failure to find the successes. But a lot of studios, like EA, doesn't think that way. The EA is like, we need a hit out the gate, and they try to design a hit out the gate, and business does not work that way.
We got all these things that just kind of came together in a way which, supportive environment, research-oriented environment, brilliant backup with brilliant people like, all the people on the team were just amazing. And the time to just really polish the game.
Yeah.
And get it right.
I love the story that you, I never played the game, but I just would presume it's just sort of a kind of a flight sim shooting type of typical kind of, because that's the genre, right, we have now. But the fact you slipped in this like subtle horror game into it too, I think is amazing. It's like a cross genre with like different loops in that. Sounds kind of ahead of its time. And for anyone who wants to nerd out on this game, just do an image search on the game, and you'll see all the sort of lore, like backs of the box. I don't know if it was in the program or the backs of the back of the box, but the photography you guys did, to sort of sell the fantasy of it, I think is really, really cool.
That was, there's some pictures that are in the chat there.
Yeah.
And something else, that we had this other secret weapon, which was Industrial Light and Magic. And, rather than, have an artist rendering of the cover, say, hey, why don't we have ILM do the box art and the photos for the manual. And it's probably the most expensive for both games. I think it was like $24,000 at the time, in early 80s, for both games. That's ridiculously expensive to create the art for these things. But we ended up, you could see that they actually made a physical model of the cockpit, and that's me sitting in the cockpit in the chat there, on the back of it. In the front in the front of the box, you can see a pilot being rescued. That was actually me in costume. And there's also the knees and hand on a joystick of another pilot. It was also me. So I kind of appeared 3 times on the box, which was fun. But they actually built a physical model, and we ended up having most of the rest of the team were the rescued pilots in the manual. As you go through the manual, that was really fun to actually be in a photo shoot. I posted some outtakes for the cockpit too. They were trying to get me to look like panicked or various emotions that totally failed as an actor trying to do those. And it shows the one where I was unconscious. Figure I acted really. That was the best acting I did, was being asleep.
Well, yeah, you were the actor, the designer, the cover, model, the artist who drew the design.
I think the team size was 4 people.
Yeah.
So typically you do a lot of your own Pixar. We did have Gary Winnick, who did the animation for the pilot running and for the Jaggy pop-up sequence. We ended up, he was a contractor. He ended up joining the team. But it was, that's pretty typical. I mean, there were no beta tester teams and folk play testers, and it was all pretty much done in-house.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm going to take a step back and show a picture of the Lucas. This is the Lucas Digital. And so this is inclusive of the Lucasfilm Games and the digital division that was doing the effects for films, including Star Trek II and Young Sherlock Holmes. I think there were a few other standout early CG kind of works. And that's David there, kind of with the big arrow. What's remarkable to me, though, I wasn't expecting this. I recognized a few faces. And all of these stars, and actually there's probably people in here I missed, all the people with stars are founders of Pixar. These are the people that when George Lucas sold Lucasfilm Digital, Steve Jobs bought it, most of these people, maybe some others, went to found Pixar. And they are the ones who created the technology, the artistry. John Lasseter is there, and Ed Catmull, and many, many other folks. So you got to be kind of a part of the history of both early Lucas gaming, but also just the innovation, the birth of 3D cinema. Did you interact much with these guys? I know you were roommates with Lauren.
Well, yeah. Well, Lauren, after he did the initial code, he got loaned to us for 6 months to kind of refine the Fractal code. Alvy, who's on the far right, Alvy Smith.
He founded SGI.
When I was, but when I was doing my computer animation book, he offered to proofread it and make sure that my animation information was correct. And it was the person I called up to ask about getting an interview at Catmull. Lauren Carpenter became the chief scientist at Pixar. So I got Pixar's chief scientist was my co-creator on Rescue on Fractalus, which is pretty awesome. It's, how could it fail based on that information? So other than that, I mean, there were team sports. There softball league and volleyball and things. You get to
lunchtime and
and possibly going to lunch or screenings or events, but not too much in terms of technology flow back and forth.
Yeah. Well, they're different, very, very different outputs for that.
Yeah, we were doing stuff on toy computers. I think most of the people there consider what we were doing not real computer. It's not really computer graphics. It was pixels. So they were working on anti-aliasing with high resolution and millions of colors, and I had one color for the bar of the cockpit for Rescue on Fractalus, so it ended up with a very jagged kind of appearance. And one of the working titles for the game was Behind Jaggy Lines. In fact, it could be because it was a double meaning, because we named the at the time the computer division's enemy were jagged lines, or the Jaggies. So that became the name of the monster in the game.
Oh, perfect.
And so it had this double meaning because you're behind jaggy lines, but also behind jaggy lines on the cockpit.
Yeah.
So it's kind of that they thought that was too esoteric, so they asked for a different name.
Oh, I like it. So all of this leads up to you now. You're working on a host of games there, and you're working on properties that are associated with Lucasfilm. You're not just creating games from scratch. You're working with these big IPs, and so you've got Labyrinth, and I don't know which was the first. Moving into kind of more the text adventure game, I don't know where you started, if it was with original IPs or the branded ones. But talk a little bit about how you got into the text adventure genre, how that came about.
Well, yeah. Well, Labyrinth was the first adventure game we did.
Okay.
And it was also, I think, a test because, they said, well, here's the property. It's not one of the family jewels. And let's see how the games group can adapt this a movie to games. So they gave this as an opportunity to us. I ended up being the project leader and designer. And we knew about text adventures. I love text adventures, but there were also, Sierra Online was also doing graphic adventures with a text interface, and we didn't have to do a text parser where you could type in a sentence or a short sentence and have it understand. We didn't have the time to actually develop that technology, so I came up with the idea of doing what I call a slot machine interface. So you'd have on the left where it says ask, there is a vertical stripe of a bunch of verbs, and on the right would be an object like a character or something in the inventory. And by choosing those two things with these vertically scrolling lists of words, you could then choose what you want to have happen. So it made it easier to play in that there weren't an infinite number of choices of words you could say, but also I think it helped by not having a parser, so you weren't playing guess the parser. Often I would get frustrated playing those text adventures where I knew what I wanted to do, but the words I was using weren't being recognized as an action that was an appropriate action. So I can't do that when it was, pick up the bush. It should have been pick up the shrub or something like that. Mm-hmm. And so this kind of got around that. And you could actually click and move characters around. So this, but this became, I guess the first version of a point and click adventure game is what we ended up being known for mostly. In the next game, which is Maniac Mansion, Ron Gilbert refined the interface and put all the verbs right there on the screen, so you knew exactly what your choices were, and you click more directly on the screen to complete your sentence, so you didn't have to find the word hoggle for that character. Mm-hmm. You just click on him and it would come up, and you didn't have to know what they were. So it just made it easier and even more friendly. So the one thing that was really fun with this is that we got to spend a week in London and brainstorm with Douglas Adams.
Wow.
Of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy fame. And he was a friend of Jim Henson. So Douglas spent a week with us, along with Christopher Cerf from Children's Television Workshop, and then people from our team, and Brenda Laurel, who is the Activision producer. We all went there and spent time figuring out what the game could be. Then it was my job to come back afterwards and take all these ideas and put them together into a cohesive game.
That's
so.
Go ahead.
The whole idea of a graphic adventure game match with Lucasfilm, which is a storytelling company. So I think that's, we've other games. That's where I spent the rest of my time after Rescue. All the rest of the games I did were adventure type games, and we ended up doing other things which I didn't participate in, like simulations, and there's a whole other group that was working on those, like flight simulators. So yeah,
Yeah.
that was it. Douglas had an idea, which is kind of funny. It was one of those things funny at the time, but I'm not sure how well it actually worked. Where he had the idea, like, what if we start the game off as a text adventure, but using this slot machine interface? So there was no image on the screen, and kind of get people used to the idea of how to use the text interface, the slot machine interface. And then once you end up going into this movie theater, where the movie Labyrinth was playing, comes on the screen, you see the big picture of Labyrinth, and you see the David Bowie character, Jareth, show up, and he essentially pulls you into the movie, and then you're inside. The rest of the game is as an adventure game. It was kind of like I think it was partly a tribute to The Wizard of Oz, where the first part of the movie is black and white, and once you get to Oz, it's in color. So that was kind of the idea. And hopefully no one played the first part and gave up because they were expecting it to be a graphic adventure game, and they never got to that. I don't know if that happened. Well, the pictures on the cover showed this, so probably not.
And no, it's amazing that this kind of gave birth to a whole genre. Was George Lucas very involved with this? Did he have? I'm curious, like how his thoughts translated into games. Like
he actually was the most involved he was that 20-minute playtest for Rescue and Ball Blazer. After that, he wasn't involved at all, really. He got to see a game after it was finished sometimes, towards the beginning. Even after that, I think he might have had copies. Maybe he played with his kids, but my experience of him, he wasn't really a game player, and so he kind of left us alone to do what we wanted to do, which was also, I think at the time I was feeling bad about that, but in retrospect, that was like the best thing you could have done, was to let us grow our own sense of humor and do our, since through most of the 80s, it was all original IP that we came up with, until we, except for the two movie-based things that we did. And that just gave us way more flexibility. I've heard stories of his involvement in the later years, like right before LucasArts, like in the 2000s, where he was so involved with some Star Wars based games that it just kind of hurt production, literally. We had to throw away huge things that we were doing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah, I know about that. And then you guys moved to the ranch. Were you the first people to break in the ranch?
Yeah, I think we were pretty close at the beginning. We knew they were building it, and we were in rented space around the Kerner area in San Rafael. And once they had space, then we moved there. I think must have been 85 that we moved there, 85, 86. And we were there for like 4 years, and then we outgrew our space. But it was, loved working there. It was it's like a 20-minute drive from my house, so it wasn't bad. But it was beautiful. And once you're there, they had, since you really couldn't go out for lunch, you either had to bring your lunch or they provide these amazing lunches at the ranch that you could get. And during the times I was in crunch mode on a few games, I would just get a larger portion for lunch and take it back to my office and eat the second half for dinner.
Yep.
But if we took advantage of it, you take breaks and walk around the area. But if the truth is, most of the time, I'm in my office. My office could have been anywhere, because I so focused on programming that the environment kind of got lost. But then you'd wake up and say, oh yeah, here I am. I loved giving tours when I was there. People would come in from out of town and take them to lunch and walk them around the different.
Are you hearing all the beeps? Oh, or is there an echo? Is that my stream maybe ended? Okay, let me. Oh, it did end. Why did that happen? This one. Okay. All right. Yeah, well, I think that's kind of. Sorry. Oh, let me fix this here. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. You still there? Okay. All right. I'm having all kinds of technical hijinks here. And is there? Let me just check the audio. I don't know if there's like a some feedback going on here. Okay, let's see how that does. So you then went on to be involved in more of these text adventure games, really evolving the genre, doing both original IPs where you got to explore your own sense of humor, your own tone and voice, but then also the branded properties where I'm sure there was a bit more scrutiny and I don't know, was there more scrutiny and constraints on these? Mm-hmm. 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 Oh, nice. Cute. Oh, that's sweet. Um, and it's yeah, just amazing. Just kind of even in just the few years that you guys are doing this, seeing the evolution of the mechanics, the interface, seeing the evolution of the art, and there's just the sophistication coming in. So again, because back then games were you were producing them in a year or two, and so you had a much faster cycle, I think, to improve in some ways. Still, I mean, the technology was still kind of a slow slope, but you were, I think. Hmm. Wow. Yeah. 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 So as you are seeing some scaling here of fidelity and just the craftsmanship of these things, were you skate with the sizes getting a little bit bigger too proportionally, or was it just you're getting more efficient and keeping the team sizes kind of the same size of the teams? Yeah. Yeah. Hmm. Um, I think you might have been. Hmm? Yeah. 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 Exactly. I think so. I think you guys probably cornered the market on kids games with Nazi symbols. So I think I don't know if you get a special award for that, but good job. Uh, oh, yeah, fair enough. So I'm going to take a dark turn from Nazis to not AAA, but to more AAA aspiring games, early games, where so you had a long run having being a part of, it sounds like a really healthy culture that embraced innovation, it embraced personality, um, and you had space to innovate, and it was very design driven. And then at some point, for one reason or another, you ended up with another company in the early to mid 90s. It would have been 94, maybe 93. Yeah. Mm. Mm. Nice. Wow. Hmm. One reason why I wanted to highlight it is, one, this is where we met, and this was the game we worked on together. And when I came to Rocket Science, I was awestruck because it was, like you said, on paper, this amazing recipe for success. Matter of fact, it was such an impressive proposal matchup that they were on the cover of Wired magazine, and there was a massive article about us, and we were all featured in the magazine. But I can't find. I have my issue here somewhere, but as I recall, it said on the cover, Rocket Science, the first digital supergroup, and then I think on the inside somewhere it said, or the next big smoking crater. And I don't know if I'm projecting that, but I think it said something like that because it was a big gamble. And it was, in fact, a smoking crater. And they had the idea of putting peanut butter and jelly together, which you think is a great idea, right? So they took the special effects people from ILM doing Hollywood-level visual effects for a game. The first game was Lodestar, and it was a science fiction, spaceships flying around. So the cover art, and also had a bunch of FMV, full motion video, narrative cinematics, and it starred Ned Beatty, who you will all recognize as a character actor for decades and decades. So it was like a cutscenes with like a movie, and then you would have the FMV gameplay where you're like on a roller coaster track kind of thing, shooting things. And of course, the actual rendered artwork looked like it did on the box. And then when you look at the quality of the streaming on Sega CD, it was compressed way down. So the peanut butter and jelly was ILM quality special effects with the Apple team digital streaming. You put them together, and now you could basically play a movie, right? It sounds great. It's like the first merger of games and Hollywood. But they missed one part of the peanut butter and jelly, and that's the bread holding it together. And that's the design. They did not design fun games. They approached it with technology and not from the standpoint of what do players want, how do players engage with this. And I think that's, David, where you were probably misappropriated, and Brian, and all the other and any other game designers who actually had game experience. Because one, you weren't respected because they didn't understand games in the gaming community. And they were so impressed by their own credentials and how they're going to elevate games that all their games really sucked. And even Cadillacs and Dinosaurs had, they outsourced to Colossal Pictures, I think, or to people who worked at Colossal to do the animation, had cutscenes, it was tied to a graphic novel. everything they were doing was really shiny, but just not fun. And the other irony is that, as I recall, the Apple team weren't able to deliver on their promise of the compression. And so a lot of content would have to get thrown out that was being, a lot of the ambition for the games had to be scaled back down. No. Yeah. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I'm presuming that was Obsidian, I assume. Yep. Yeah. Yep. That's a perfect analogy. Um, so let's move on. I want you to take a deep breath and say I'm present. Oh, so here's the little joke thing. So another piece of stress for us, or not stress, but um, what's the word? I don't know. Trivia is that there was an intern. So I had been working in games for a few years. You had been working in games much longer than I, and apparently there was an intern working there I never met, and he was this young kid. And this young kid was working. He's an engineering intern, and all of you know him today as the intern. And yes, that is Elon Musk. So did you know that, David? Did we talk about that before? Afterwards, yeah. Well, he was a nobody at the time, so yeah, 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 yeah. Very very briefly. But anyway, so yeah, enough. Okay, let's all take a deep breath now. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, I never met him. Okay, so you then got to kind of immerse yourself in this wonderful, wacky world of Rube Goldberg, and then you were taking this, and then it took you into a whole new medium. You want to talk a little bit about that?
and we're talking for like 10 minutes, and she's, say, yeah, it sounds really good. We haven't done this before yet. And so I really want to honor the legacy of my grandfather. And I said, what, wait. And she kind of said it in a way which kind of made it seem like it wasn't important. And it kind of almost went by me. I said, wait, your grandfather? Are you saying Rube Goldberg was your grandfather? She said, yeah. I said, okay. So that we ended up with a great connection. She was happy to work with me on this. She became like a co-producer on the project. So she remembered her grandfather. He died when she was like 11 years old. So she had some really strong memories of him. And that's where this came. Unity Games. Unity, I had a friend, Tony Garcia, who was one of the Lucasfilm Games employees, as a producer, was at that time working for Unity as one of their business manager, I think the VP of biz dev. And he said, hey, I think I might have a way for you to make this game. We're gonna start up a new group called Unity Games within Unity. And for people who know Unity, it's like one of the main 3D tools that people use for creating games environments. So we got funding from them. I worked with another team, Kalani Games. Kalani was also someone I worked with at Lucasfilm. And we did the game. It came out in 2013 and for desktop and for mobile. And after 10 years later, I said, well, I wonder if started going to like the new VR systems have been coming out, and I said, well, gee, I wonder if there's already a 3D game and this is a 3D environment. Could we turn this into a VR game? And I funded some research. I brought a programmer in to try to cobble it together to see whether it would work. And it actually was really fun. I'd love to find a publisher for this at some point to actually complete the game and bring it out to market. Realize that this is beyond my current capabilities in terms of budget and marketing and doing all the rest. I don't want to be a publisher of this type of game at that level. So if anyone knows a VR publisher that would love to work with us, that would be great. Pitch.
Yeah, I remember. I remember doing the demo. It was really, or I think you had a demo at some point, and I was playing with it. It was really fun just to be able to construct this in real space.
Yeah, where you could actually reach in with your fingers and pick up objects and move them around. We did it like a shadow box. So you have what looked like a wooden box with an open front, and so each of these scenes would be put inside the box, and you could reach in and move things around, tie strings to the different objects and things.
Yeah, it was just so great for trial and error because you were dealing with real distance and physics and things. So it just seemed like a natural way to utilize VR. So let's get this funded, people. Let's get it published. And then you've kind of come full circle recently. You've have had now a couple of these journeys back to kind of where you started, but now approaching it almost in that kind of retro lens, but with more fidelity, and kind of crossing that line between how much do you push it, how much do you keep it really core to what the original games were like. How did you enjoy this, and did you take anything away from looking back on this stuff?
Well, I've been in touch with several people that I used to work with at Lucas, and one of them is Ron Gilbert. And whenever he would work on a game, sometimes he would show it to me, and kind of do a play test with me, where he'd have me sit down and play the game while he didn't say anything, and just have me talk out loud what I was experiencing. And then he and Gary Winnick decided to do a Kickstarter in 2015, and it was so successful that they were able to expand the team and invite me on to be one of the programmers on this. That was Thimbleweed Park, and that was a blast. It was a virtual working group. We use Slack for communication. relatively small team, and I was, helped with the design and a lot of the coding, and it was so fun to be able to do all the things I wished I could have done back in the old days, where you didn't have to, where you, first of all, you had a computer that was powerful enough to immediately, make a change and reload, and it would just be there, not have to wait 5 minutes for the disk to get sent down to the disk and try again. Essentially unlimited storage, because it was, virtual downloads. Really the only gating factor was time and money. So obviously we didn't have an unlimited budget. We had to get the game done. But other than that, it was just so fun, to not have to worry about how do you make this work, and whether there'd be too much stuff happening on the screen that would slow things down. I could have in this game, for example, in the scene on the bottom, each one of those stars was run by a separate script to have it randomly flicker. So I could have a couple hundred stars in the sky and have them all, animated through our scripting language, and there was no lag. It was just fine. So that was like freeing, and it was a really fun game to work on. And then a few years later, Ron again approached me if I like to work on this new game, but I had to do non-disclosure first because it wasn't one of his own properties, and that was Return to Monkey Island, and that was a shock. I mentioned Monkey Island was probably one of my favorite games that I've played before. I wasn't on the team to do it, so I just admired it from outside the team. I think I was the director of operations at the time. So to actually work on one of those games was a blast. So I was the lead game programmer for the project.
And you didn't even tell me that when you were working on that. You wouldn't even tell me what you were doing. Jerk.
I couldn't tell anyway. The only person who I could tell was Annie, and that was written into the agreement I had to sign in blood. That was really it's a Disney property. Disney owns all the IP. So I eventually could tell my son, because I invited my son and daughter-in-law to be playtesters. They play focus groups essentially, where they had them play the game while we were watching, and so they got to be NDA'd also, and they got to try it. But I don't think our dog had to sign the NDA, because she just doesn't. She's pretty quiet about things like this.
Just tight-lipped, yeah. No, that's funny. And
he knows all the secrets.
I know she does. And you now have a new hobby, and you have a new friend. You want to introduce him?
Yeah, sure. I'll bring him over. So I ended up getting into 3D printing, and
look at that.
There it is.
It's like what? So, third scale, a quarter scale.
Yeah, it's pretty small, and there's electronics in here. If I turn this on, so this was essentially, it's not my design. I just took the 3D model, and there's so the lights work.
The head turns.
The head.
Nice. Does it make sounds?
It doesn't make sound, other than the motors.
Oh, got it.
It seemed to be. So there's. Let me turn that off. I'll turn that off because it's too noisy. So there's a joystick missing. I'm waiting for the part to arrive, but it's like a tank control, so you can actually move it forward, back, and 3D print with the joystick also. Yeah,
that's amazing to me that it all functions. It's all 3D printed.
So there's, I can add the link to the chat, I think. But I've always been interested in 3D printing. I never got to do it. And then when Annie finished her last book, one of the characters in the book was creating these objects that she imagined from I guess say I could tell, but I don't want to give too much away. But there are several things which we decided, hey, I could print those, and we could, when we do like book boxes to send to people, we could include some of these things in it. So that gave me a good excuse to get a 3D printer and then start doing this. And this is probably this R2D2. I mean, you can see there are like 177 separate little parts that I had to print and then glue together to assemble it, plus electronics package, which was a separate thing, which I ordered and kind of like a kit. And all those got put together. It took me several weeks to do it.
Yeah, that's incredible.
It was, it was a lot of fun to do it. And I haven't yet started modeling my own stuff. That's still on my list of things to do. And trying my own stuff. But this is, if I could do something this complex and it ends up working like right off, then that's really nice. I'll paste the link into the chat so people have it.
So I think that's maybe we can close out with maybe just a question or two. Just I'm always looking for what's kind of universal in terms of what we do that can transcend medium, transcend discipline even. So, as a game designer, what is it you're fundamentally trying to provide the players? It just kind of an intrinsically human level.
Well, there's something that, going back to my original goal was to create an experience which changed you in some positive way as a person. Can you, not therapy, but can you have an experience which alters you in the same way that a really good movie can do it, where you have maybe a different viewpoint of the world after having this experience. I feel like Zak McKracken, I got to do more of that with that game because I was introducing people to ideas of like new age stuff and karma and, idea of like mind linking and other things that were kind of like paranormal-ish stuff, which I've always really been interested in. But finding ways to use games as like a sneaky way to get people to think differently about themselves and the world. I think basically games hopefully are not just meant to give you an emotional experience. That's why I really haven't done much in the way of shooting games, where most of the experiences like adrenaline and maybe fear kind of a reaction. I'm much more interested in games that are fun and funny and just kind of make you feel good. Mm-hmm. I love it when I hear people have played my games with someone else or with their kids, or I get emails from people saying that they remember playing my game sitting on their father's lap. And that's one of their fondest memories. And just stuff like that where it brings people together. It just it always makes me feel really good when I hear things like that.
That's great. Well, I want to just thank you. Thanks first of all for being my friend, and secondly for letting me sucker you into the interview here. But I think your story is always inspiring, and I'm really glad that we could share it with other people. And I'd like to just open it up to the group now to turn on your cameras, turn on your mic, say hello to David, ask a question, or put your question in the chat, and we'll fish through those. And I'm going to stop my share.
Hi everyone.
And I have to unmute a couple of people here. So let me unmute you all now. Oh, why is that not? There we go. So we can actually go, there's some questions in the chat. So one, okay, you didn't work at Fandango, thanks. Let's see, where is it?
I saw a bunch of questions flying by before, which I didn't answer.
Yeah.
Um, I see from one from Melissa. It says, I'm curious, how much does the modern indie video game development scene have in common with early days of video game development? I think where it's probably closest is when you talk about indie game development, where you're working with a relatively small kind of grassrootsy team, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 people or 10 people. There, it's very similar, and I think both Thimbleweed Park and Return to Monkey Island felt a lot like the old stuff we did, except with more resources. When you're talking about AAA games, I've never worked on one, but from everything I could see, it's so different. It's like the difference between maybe doing an indie student film or indie film and doing like a $500 million Hollywood film. Just its scale, but also how many people have to be managed and the budget and how important it has to be. Are there other questions?
I can ask another question. What is it that, and you and I talked about this a little bit before, kind of what is it about the nature of this genre that you really, I think you guys really architected or authored the genre, the click,
And click,
point and click kind of adventure game. What is it that, how does it appeal to people? What, it still has staying power too, but there's like, what is it about that genre that you think players are drawn to?
Well, I can talk about some things that we did differently than some, say, Sierra Online was also doing point and click essentially, or graphic adventure games. I mean, they weren't often exactly point and click, but I think there was a big philosophical difference that we had, where I believe we wanted our players to succeed and have a good time and get to the end. And often felt to me when I played a Sierra game that they wanted to trip you up. They wanted to put roadblocks in, and I could sometimes I could imagine the designer smirking in the background, like kind of like, I got you there, kind of a thing. And we were always like, come on, here, you can do it. We'll give you another hint here. Let's see if we can get you to do it. And I think even more so with Return to Monkey Island, where we had all this support structure to make you successful as game player to go through the story, between having lists that you could maintain that were automatically maintained for you of checklists of things you had to do. If you played the game, stopped the game for like a few days and came back, it would kind of like previously on playing game, you'd have the character talking about what happened up to that point. There was a built-in hint system that was, you didn't lose points for using it. It was just there to help you, and it was progressive hints, so it would help you with trying to give you a push in the right direction with more and more explicit hints. And we just really wanted people to succeed and have a good time and not get stuck. And obviously you could power through and do it that way, but there are no random deaths. There are no things that you would have to keep on saving and then loading in order to make sure you didn't lose the game, get into an unwinnable situation. I think you can win the game from any point. That wasn't the case in the old days. We didn't know how to do that then. So yeah. I still think Lucasfilm Games or LucasArts stopped doing them in the early 2000s, I think, because the cost versus the installed base or the interested audience didn't pay off. There were a- as you had more space to put DVDs for storage instead of floppy disks or CDs. You cost money to do all the animation for all those, and they got more and more expensive. And I think at some point they just couldn't charge enough to, weren't enough people to buy them, so they just stopped doing it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I see, Queen. There was a question about. Okay.
There's a question about if you know about Willie Beamish. It was a Sierra game, maybe?
I don't know that.
And then
I don't know the game. I kind of gave up on Sierra after having some bad experiences. I actually kind of got to in Thimbleweed Park. I did a lot of the coding for one of the characters, Dolores, and got to have her ranting about how if this were a Sierra Online game and she reached into the refrigerator and picked up a broken bottle of ketchup, she would have died if it were a Sierra game. And just had fun kind of ranting with her as that. There was I see Sai has a question about what's my one big advice for other creative dorks out there. One advice that has helped me continue to be a creative person. Partly it's really only doing projects you are passionate about. If I'm working on a game or a project that that's drudgery or I'm not having fun on, then it's going to come through in the final product. For the past couple years, most of what I've been doing is supporting Annie in her writing. She's been writing books for pretty much her whole life, but a few years ago she switched from doing more self-help books for kids or parents to doing young adult novels. And she's a fabulous writer and have fun kind of being her publisher in a sense, where doing everything from formatting the book to helping to produce it to keeping everything going and helping her social media and doing little videos for that. And it's really fun. I'm hoping to do more of that and bring in some AI generative video stuff based on her novels to kind of experiment with that. That should be fun. So I think it's really finding your passion and doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's hard when you're also trying to support yourself if you're not getting money for doing that. So how do you, the dream job would be to be able to do that and get paid. The second is to do it on the side until you're good enough to get money from it, if that's part of it. The idea that, things I've done in the past often led to something really cool, even though that may not have been the goal, because I was just having fun doing it.
Yeah.
I see the question. Yoda stories. I know Hal Barwood did those. I think I was out of Lucas by the time he did that. Hal Barwood did a couple of the Indiana Jones games after the Last Crusade, and he's actually one of the rare people who is actually in the film industry as a director and writer, who ended up then becoming a game developer. For most of it's always been, game developers have wishes that they could become film creators, and Hal kind of went the other direction. Okay, there's another question.
There are a couple more hidden up there. They have the question marks on them. I think there's one about how Lucas Games got the rights back.
I just want to comment on Red Jack. He said he played Thimbleweed Park and loved it.
Oh, good.
Yeah, let's go back and play it. Yeah, Thimbleweed Park actually had both Return to Monkey Island. Both of them have 2 levels of difficulty. So you could play on the easier level, and or just use the hints and don't feel embarrassed that you're using the hints. Sometimes you just need a little push in the right direction. Okay. Was there another one?
There was one around how Lucas Games got the rights back to the Star Wars.
Yeah, well, wasn't I think it wasn't as much getting the rights back. It was that the agreements were like maybe 10-year or some number of year
And expired.
licensing agreement. And if you look at the timeline there, the first trilogy, Return of the Jedi came out in '83. The licenses are probably established soon after the first film came out in '77. So it was like 10 or 12 years or whatever. Maybe they were renewable to some point. But after Return of the Jedi, like 5 years later, there really wasn't much happening in new material. And I think the licenses might have gotten stale, not as valuable, and they just let them lapse. And then by then we had the tech in house to do Star Wars stuff. And I mean, I said before that I was kind of upset that I couldn't do Jet Rescue on Fractalus as a Star Wars game. I've totally switched my point of view on that. The fact that we weren't allowed to do it, I think, was what made us such a great place to work at and such a great group, because we had the creative freedom. We didn't have anyone coming in and saying you can't do that. We didn't have people who were Star Wars experts who would say what it was. That changed in the early '90s when the licenses expired and we actually started doing Star Wars stuff, and I was pretty much gone by then. And I think because it was so easy to do that, that became almost all the games that were done at LucasArts at some point were Star Wars based. And I think maybe they overdid it. Some other people couldn't say because I haven't played a lot of them. I'm actually not a big game player. I don't play a lot of games, which is ironic. My game is creating a game. The fun part is actually doing it.
I don't feel so bad now because that's always been my story too, and I get a lot of slack for it.
I should do more. Probably it's still my area, but I have a in books it's TBR, where you're to be read list. In games, what is it? TBP, to be played. I don't know. I have a huge backlog of games I got on sale for my quest. I still haven't even tried to play yet.
Well, we've been running pretty long here. You guys have more questions for David? And you're also welcome just to speak up, turn on your cameras, say hi. It's always great.
I should also say I'm on social media a lot. If you want to reach me, one way is email through my website, electriceggplant.com, but I'm also on Blue Sky as davidbfox.com. That's probably the easiest way to actually have a conversation. I'm also kind of on TikTok and Instagram, Facebook, Threads. I've given up on X, Twitter, for a couple of years. I deleted the app. And also I'm going to be Annie and I are both going to be speaking at DEF CON in August, in like a little over 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks from today, I think. And I'm actually giving a talk on Rescue on Fractalus.
Nice.
And kind of going the whole. I did that once, like 20 years ago, and haven't really revisited it. So I want to kind of go deeper. And now that I know more about giving talks, that should be really fun.
Yeah.
And then we're going to be in the Netherlands and in Brussels also. And if you happen to be in the Netherlands, we're giving a talk at the Home Computer Museum on August 23rd, and that should be fun.
We do have a couple of Dutch folks with us, so yeah, I'll have to get the information from you. I think that'd be awesome.
Netherlands.
Yes. I want to plug one thing real quick. I want to put David and Annie on the spot, and just that if you would both like to come back and both of you talk about your adventure in self-publishing, I think that would be an incredibly compelling story. Because one thing that I'm trying to do with this community is, besides just giving us some form of distraction and support while we are struggling with our careers, but to be inspiring each other to be creators, to be putting your work out there, taking risks. And what you two have done has been amazing, and how you've basically formed your own company. Yeah, if you ever feel like it, let's bring you both back.
Yeah, for sure. I know Annie would be up for it, and I love doing it too. And I mean, partly it's we're learning as we're going. We've published two novels now, plus some other books before that, and it's a fun experience, and we're getting better, and learned a lot. The one piece of advice is like Annie was wanting to go the traditional route first and get an agent, and got a lot of great feedback, but no takers. And at some point, we said, this could go on forever. Be encouraged to keep trying, but we don't want to do that. So we said, okay, it's 2 years. We'll give it 2 years if we haven't found something we're going to do it ourselves again, and do it. And that's what we did.
Good. There's one more question I wouldn't mind you tackling, which is basically, having experienced all the changes in the industry, the crisis, having your own personal crisis, what advice would you give to those of us who are anxious about the current crisis in this sector and are struggling to find motivation and energy to continue on this path?
That's tough. I mean, if you could, if you can't find a company that's hiring in your area of expertise, it's like the idea of doing. There are so many other avenues that you have now other than having to work for a large company. Especially with some of the tools that we have now. Like I'm blown away with some of the generative video I've seen come out. The idea that you could actually use that and put it together with your own story, either as scenes for a game or for any other type of media, and then and skip the publishing thing and just build a following through social media, through other places. Knowing that if your goal is to get really good at it as opposed to make a lot of money at it, then I think the second thing will follow for some people. You might find there's a different opportunity that it takes you to. But again, it's like follow your passion and learning the new tools and techniques and try to stay up on those as they come out and having fun. I mean, for Annie's stuff, what makes doing her social media stuff fun is learning getting better at tools and doing it. So as soon as I get bored doing it, I try to pivot and find a new way to do it. So I'm still learning while I'm doing that. Does that answer the question? I don't know if that's...
I think it does. I think I can second that to say that finding purpose, holding on to your purpose, whether it's creating, so create stuff, if it's learning, learn, if it's helping people, help. This is what I'm doing, why I'm doing this, is just because I'm having anxiety about being out of work, about the future of my career, but this is really helping me. And it doesn't solve the practical problem. I'm going to mute you, Nicholas. But it goes a long way. And I thank you, Red Jack, for the question. I think this is something we should always be talking about. This is why this server exists. I want to have more conversations like this with the community, because I think we can all help each other, because we're all going through this. So let's not go through it alone. I want to be respectful of your time, David. We're going on 2 hours. Would you like to take any more questions? Do you want to go do a bike ride?
Got my bike yesterday.
Okay.
I'm happy to go a little longer, but I think people are probably, if you want to wrap up more questions and people will stop asking questions, then we could stop. But I just want to make sure that people aren't being cut off if they had something we missed.
I'm going to say this also, Ian. I see you. Looks like your There. Okay, you finally sent a message. Okay. Never mind, Ian. Yeah. And anyone else with, you want to turn on your cameras and wave to David? You want to say hello in person, introduce yourselves? Like, this is what we're doing too. Like, we're not in the same room, but treat it as though we were. This is a chance to meet each other.
Paste this in. Commercial links.
Oh, wow. Thanks, David.
Oh. Yeah. I just typed those up just now.
Fast. I'm going to do a plug then. I'm going to post today Friday's Cinematic Design Talk. I meant to post that yesterday and I forgot. Also, I'm going to be posting for next Monday's interview. We're going to be interviewing Neil Blevins, and Neil comes from visual effects. He comes from Pixar animation. He's worked in games, and he has his own brand as a science fiction illustrator. He puts out his own books. He's very prolific artist and self-publisher, and he travels to all the conventions, and he's just a sweetheart, really nice guy. And he's an active member of the community as well. So if you see Neil in the Discord, say hi to him and tell him you're looking forward to the talk. And what else? I think that's the gist of it for this week. Again, if any of you would like to be a part of this, please reach out. It's non-obligatory. There's no commitment. It's basically, can you get value or purpose out of helping? And then I will help make that happen. So if there's something you love to do, something you want to learn how to do, and if this community can help you with that, then that's what I want to be doing. And otherwise, just keep coming and help spread the word, because that helps too. If you can spread the word to your own networks, if you can comment on the social media posts to share your thoughts on how, if you enjoyed the talk, what you got out of it, anything just to help us build this community and bring more people here. Because I think as we grow, we're going to have critical mass will help to bring more value for all of us. So we'll do it in a very scaled way. But definitely anything you can do to support the community is going to be very valued. And thank you. Thank you to David. Thank you to Annie for lending us you. And thanks for all of you for coming and having questions and sharing your LucasArts passions.
You're welcome.
And the last thing I will say, I will send out probably sometime between now and the end of the week a poll. After definitely say hello, wave, say hi to David. After every event, I'm going to be sending out a poll to learn more about how we can do a better job of presenting and to get more of the kind of content and topics you're interested. Thanks, Gump. And I really want to have meaningful content and events that we're presenting here. So please fill out the polls when I send them out, because it really helps us to figure out what are future talks to do, how can I make them more effective, how can we make sure we're really speaking to the community and what your interest is, as opposed to just me kind of guessing. So I want to have more of a two-way interaction with you guys. So that's all I have to say. David, you want to close out with anything? Any words of wisdom or?
Yeah, no, I love this. Back in the day when we were doing games, there was no social media. There was no way to interact with our audience. We get occasional letters that maybe got published in the fan letter, but there was no direct interaction. And it wasn't until 2004 when I got invited to give a talk at a conference in Oslo that I actually realized that people were still playing our games, that there was such thing as emulators, that none of the games actually died, that they probably would continue to be playable for as long as people had devices of any kind. And that was a huge eye opener. And I don't get to do this a lot, but I really enjoy interacting with people and hearing what people liked about the games that we created, and also how it maybe impacted their lives in some way. I mean, there was one person I'm thinking of who loved Zak McKracken, where there's travel between Earth and Mars, and he ended up becoming astrophysicist and worked on the telescope that just went up. Which one? I forgot what it's called. Not Hubble, the other one. And but apart in Germany for that went on that. And so just like seeing something you do decades ago having some reaction later on that you never expected. Nice. Anyway, so thank you.
Unless it's Cadillacs and dinosaurs, and then just keep it to yourself.
Yeah, well, I never bought a Cadillac.
All right. Thank you, everybody. And David, you're amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
And people, you're welcome to stay on this call, have an after party, compare notes, talk about your experiences. If there's other questions you want to surface to me or David, throw them in the chat. We'll see if there's a way I can capture more. But otherwise, embrace this community you're a part of right now, and embrace what you have in common. And I'm going to go get some water. And I'll see you all later.
I'm going to turn my camera off. I'll leave the chat open just in case.
Thanks, guys.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Ian.
Thank you so much. Thank you all.
Thank you.